pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is to review and approve the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further comments? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the project worksheet sub-grant applications, FEMA reimbursement. Dustin?
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Dustin Willett, Pennington County Emergency Manager. First off, thank you for another special meeting, and this should be the last one pertaining to these FEMA sub-grant applications. These should be the last two sub-grant applications that you guys will have to address and review. So thank you for your support and everything you've done through this process. I know it's been a lot of last-minute meetings. So we have two today. These are the last two. I thought we were just going to have one, but they actually broke it out into two. One will cover donated resources, and if it pleases the board, we'll deal with that one second. The first one I'd like to address is the one that's page 1 of 4. And this is actually going to be PN 106. What this application is covering is damage to county-owned equipment that was specific to the storm. There are some buildings and grounds has a pretty high-priced piece of equipment that was destroyed by effects from the storm. The fact that there's a narrative in there about something freezing open and a snowpack and then melting and water got into some sensitive electronics, and it destroyed a $17,000 part that they had to replace directly related to the storm. And then there are some damages to individual sheriff's office vehicles. And then there are damages to some specific Pennington County search and rescue vehicles, in particular the snowcats and the mat tracks that we were using those first 2 days in search and rescue and emergency service missions. The only caveat to this application is if the board makes the decision to approve my signature on this, and I do it and send it in, we will not receive any money for this until we have all of the correct insurance documentation in FEMA's hands so that they can make sure that all the right channels went through and that insurance has been involved. And so there's some fine details between FEMA and the insurance, our insurance policy that need to be worked out. I can say that will be worth it's a matter of detail, and that amount will stand. What it boils down to is we have liability coverage on these assets, but nothing that would cover the damage done during the storm. And so basically we need the insurance company to tell FEMA that in order for this project worksheet to stand on its own merits, if that makes sense. So this amount is valid per this application and is what it is reasonable to expect we will be reimbursed should you approve my signature on this. But just so you know, there's still some paperwork that needs to be exchanged between FEMA and the insurance companies before they'll follow through on this. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions as it pertains to PN 106, and I think Chief Deputy Mueller is here too if there's any specific questions on the Sheriff's Department assets.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll ask him. Commissioner Holloway started to say something. I was going to let him, but apparently not. None of these vehicles are covered by collision or comp insurance, just liability?
A few of them are covered by comp collision, and it's $500 deductibles.
On each one?
Yep.
And how about the snowcat?
Snowcats, to the best of my knowledge, I'm waiting. They're not comp collision, and I'm waiting for the documentation from Lori that at least lets me know they're on our liability policy. But they're certainly not on our comp collision.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the total cost will be paying the deductible? And what would be left after that?
With the vehicles damage that we have, like to the search and rescue vehicles, it's liability only, so there is no insurance payout for the damages. We don't have a deductible payment to that. We cover the damages. So those damages came 100% out of our pocket. Insurance doesn't cover those damages.
Brian?
Okay.
Morning, Brian Mueller, Pennington County Sheriff's Office. We're still working with the insurance company on our full coverage vehicles, and that's the information Dustin said that we still need to get sorted out so we can get our actual cost to Pennington County once we get all of those insurance claims processed through. So,
Any other questions or comments?
So FEMA only wants to pay the actual cost to Pennington County on
Correct.
this particular claim.
Correct.
The rest of them, it doesn't make any difference.
On this particular claim, FEMA will pay what insurance doesn't.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion to allow our emergency management personnel to sign the document and send it to FEMA on PN 106.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the submission and signature of PN 106, was it?
Yes.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just one quick statement. As I said the last time when we worked on the SEMA stuff, that I would like to reserve the right to bring this back up at a later date, because if the insurance comes anywhere close to it, there's no sense of billing the federal government for it.
Any other remarks?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Frankly, if this was the only one we were submitting, I could probably support this because it is reimbursing us. Although if I was going to support it, I'd want to find out how much we already had in our budget. But I'm not going to support it because we've already gotten more money than I think we should have, so.
Any other remarks? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Yes.
Reluctantly, yes.
No,
Yes,
Thank you.
motion carried. Next item.
The next one in front of you is, this is subject grant application PN 104. And this one is emergency protective measures for volunteer labor, basically donated resources. And let me make sure that I'm saying exactly what I need to be saying here. So this covers, the two things that this covers, the biggest chunk of this are the snowmobilers that came out and volunteered their time and their snowmobile equipment. The second part of this are the time for the search and rescue volunteers who operated their equipment, again, during that weekend. So FEMA has equipment costs, hourly rate equipment costs, that they, for lack of a better term, credit us for those for the equipment that the volunteers used that was not county owned, in this case the snowmobiles. And then they have a set rate of $12.50 per hour for all of the documented time that volunteers spent assisting Pennington County in our emergency protective measure missions. So you won't see a total cost reflected because we didn't pay for anything and they're not reimbursing us for anything. And the devil's in the details, and I know that's semantics. It equates to them basically crediting us, paying us for that donated labor. So just because it's weird in the numbers, I can't mince the intent. The words are kind of strange, but the intent on this is FEMA does provide the county monetary compensation for the volunteer equipment and volunteer labor that was provided to us. So that the amount up here is in the top third of page 2 where it says total donated resources, and the amount is $5,546.55.
and if I understand it right from our prior conversations, what they do is they take that and use that as part of our match money that
On paper,
we're
it-
supposed to be?
Correct.
So that we get more money on the other end because we can claim this.
Correct.
as spent
That's my
money.
understanding of it. Bottom line, this, again, not to mince words, bottom line, this ends up $5,000 in our pocket from the federal government is the bottom line for that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so do we return any of this 5,000 to the volunteers? Do we,
We have no mechanism in place to pay volunteers for doing that. They did it out of the goodness of our heart. There's no standard agreement. That's not a common practice that we do in Pennington County. I can tell you that there's some discussion in Custer County of putting something in place. The issue there, though, is it has to be across the board all the time. You can't pay volunteers that come work out of the goodness of their heart just because the federal government comes in and wants to write a check. That's specifically not allowed in the regulations. So if Pennington County had a standing policy of doing that, of calling in volunteer labor and compensating them, that changes the whole equation. Then it's no longer really donated resources. It would fall actually under force account labor. So the answer is no. None of this money goes back into, we don't have a mechanism unless the board did something specific to get this money back into the pocket of the people that actually provided the labor. What my office did do is obviously covered all the snacks and water and fuel and emergency repairs if they broke something on their sleds when they were out using them, tracks or a suspension piece or something like that. I had them turn those invoices into me and I paid that through my office. But the per hour rate that FEMA has assigned to their snowmobiles and the $12.50 per hour per person has not been given to those people, and we don't currently have a plan or mechanism in place to do that. So basically, this is us getting this money for work they donated to us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think it, I can't think of the right word, denigrates maybe the volunteerism that these people want to supply to the county and be good deed doers. And I will be voting against this.
so if we vote against this, does it do anything to any of the prior?
Absolutely not.
Okay, because, I mean, volunteering out in this area, right, of the world is volunteering. And
Correct.
you do it because you want to help somebody. And it drives me crazy. This part, I just think it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And it's got nothing to do with you. I
No.
understand. You're doing your job and we want you to do that, but
Yeah.
I totally understand, completely understand.
And then you look at it and we're quibbling about 5,500, but sometimes it's, a penny isn't right.
Kinda like stealing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Dustin, explain again how this subject to the backside of our FEMA stuff. You're taking this hourly deal and putting it in as our percentage against the FEMA money. What's going to happen to that paperwork if we do reject this today?
What this does, and I have asked for clarification at the state level and federal level on exactly what the process is, and that question seems to have spawned a few discussions, but I haven't gotten anything back definitively yet. Let me answer that as best I can. Rather than getting into the 85, 80, 75% reality of what we did, let me just use the 75% model so that it's clear for discussion. We had, say, and this is completely subjective, just hypothetical, say that we had $100,000 of allowable costs. FEMA comes in, says you had $100,000 of allowable costs. We're going to pay 75% of that. So they reimburse us $75,000 on that $100,000. The state gives us an extra 10%. So the state gives us $10,000. So now we've received reimbursement from the federal government and the state government to the total of $85,000 out of the $100,000 that was eligible. So that means we are responsible for $15,000 out of that $100,000 allowable cost. Our match is 15% that we've already spent. what FEMA says with donated resources is we're going to calculate a dollar amount for these donated resources, and that applies to your match. But it's a match we've already spent. So the way FEMA applies that to our match is they send us a check.
So they're gonna send us extra money above and beyond the 100,000.
So in this case, if this 5,000, and I'll round it to 5,000. So in this case, FEMA would have paid and the percentage isn't right there, but FEMA would have paid 75% or 75,000. The state would have paid 10,000, and then FEMA would say, and we're going to give you $5,000, as part of your match. So in the end, the county would, on paper, be left holding the bag for $10,000. Is what that comes down to.
When you take this 5,000 out, though, now all of a sudden we're talking about $95,000 worth of reported expenses. Right? And then they'll pay 75% of the 95,000.
The donated resources did not figure into that $100,000 because we didn't spend money on the donated resources. So it didn't figure into that $100,000 allowable cost.
Only the government can do math like this.
And I have asked for better clarification on that whole process, and I have nothing to show for those lines of inquiry.
150.
But nowhere you've heard that if we turn this down, we're going to
Each of these
jeopardize.
sub-grant applications that you've reviewed and the prior ones that you've authorized my signatures on are their own grant application to the federal government. So the ones that I put my signature on with your authorization, there's a check attached to that for the dollar amount that's listed. So what you choose to authorize me to sign or not sign doesn't affect the ones that I've signed will go in, and that reimbursement will come. If there's one that you choose not to sign or alter the amount on, then that's valid too. So they're not taken in totality. They stand on their own. It would be perfectly legitimate for the board to not authorize my signature on the donated resources subgrant application.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I don't want to see is tomorrow morning in the headlines of the Rapid City Journal is Pennington County refuses donated hours. So,
I wouldn't mind that.
well, I wouldn't like it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to not allow signature on what is it, PN
104.
And let the federal government know that in South Dakota, we don't have to pay our volunteers.
Okay,
Is there a second?
you betcha.
And Commissioner Davis, before the vote, just to reassure you, I am typically contacted after these votes to clarify that, and I will certainly make sure that's noted. We're not refusing. The hours have already been donated. The work's already been done. I actually attended the snowmobilers meeting last week and offered thanks and better collaborate. I mean, we're working on plans together, and I've thanked them as much as I can possibly thank them, and I'll continue to do that publicly. The hours were donated. The work's already been done. We're just not accepting, depending on the way this vote goes, we just wouldn't be accepting payment from the government for the work they did for us out of the goodness of their heart.
In this snowmobile club, do you have names and contacts, and things that?
Oh, absolutely.
We put it in our minutes every month or every meeting about volunteer hours, and maybe these people should.
I will get that spreadsheet to Nick, and also I don't want to speak for the sheriff's office, but I know that one of the supervisors with the sheriff's office that was working with the snowmobilers that weekend has put in for some recognition through the sheriff's office, and I've done the same for those individuals through the fire department. We have a citizen recognition award that those agencies give, and I know the sheriff's office is processing some of those, and I'm processing some of those through the fire department. So we're working to recognize them with every avenue that we have to recognize them.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Buskirk,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Troutman,
Yes.
Peterson,
No.
All right, thank you, commissioners.
right,
Any other
motion
questions
to adjourn.
for me?
We have a motion to adjourn. And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.